Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. I'm continually hearing that even if Ford and GM do go bankrupt, then the government will simply bail them out with some sort of too big to fail nonsense in order to save hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? That's what happens in America. Corporations make a fortune in the good times, overextend themselves with too much debt, then they get another big payday from the government. We witnessed all of this in the global financial crisis, and all the money the government bailed out with the banks was never passed on to the taxpayers. It doesn't even shock or surprise us anymore. What's really sad is we've accepted that's life. So it looks like very few people are in disagreement with me in the fact that GM and Ford will go bankrupt, as they can't deliver a decent, affordable EV, let alone at a profit. And EVs are the inevitable future. It's literally impossible for them within the legacy systems they've built. It won't be long until Tesla will literally have a $20,000 cost advantage over every EV a legacy auto can make. And if Tesla can deliver a $25,000 EV, then it's really unlikely legacy autos can make an EV for $5,000 to compete with Tesla, let alone do it with a profit. Oh, and also FSD is another inevitable future, which is something else these companies can't achieve. These companies are gone. Electric is the future, and they can't do it. Like I said, I think we all agree on this. We've run through so many case scenarios of if legacy autos did this, or if the government helped them with this, or they teamed up with this battery company, etc., etc. Okay, so ICE sales dry up one way or another, whether it's through government messing around with the markets or more consumers reading the writing on the wall and not wanting to buy an ICE car that is going to be worthless in a few years. Legacy autos obviously can't make enough EVs to sell to cover the lost ICE sales, and let alone a profit anyway. In fact, the more EVs they sell, the higher their losses will be, so their cash starts to dwindle rapidly, as they still have OPEX, like payroll. They will need to start downsizing, laying off workers and closing factories, except the unions make that difficult for them. The cash keeps dwindling more and more. They have to cut R&D and all future growth with EVs, as they won't have enough cash. They look around and see their competition are in the same boat. The government step in and talk to them. The executives plead their case, saying it's too big to fail. The US auto industry is the staple of this country, blah, blah, blah. They even take low shots and say things like, we're the reason we won the war. Whatever it takes. They bring out some ridiculous numbers like, we need a $100 billion bailout. GM didn't even repay all their last bailout. They literally stole all of that money from taxpayers. So the government asked, what is this money going to be used for? The truth being it's simply for the executives' golden parachutes. They all know it's game over for them. It's like trying to bail out Kodak to sell more camera film when everyone is using digital cameras. So their only chance is to say it's to pay for their transition to EVs. Okay, well, however they sell it to Congress, it's moot really. I mean, it's moot whether they get the bailout or not. These companies are still finished. My point is, how will a bailout even help them? Even if Ford was given something like $50 billion, well, they have this enormous debt of over $100 billion. A lot of this debt is backed by financed cars. All these financed cars have perhaps dropped half of their value due to no one wanting to buy ICE cars. There's not enough collateral to cover Ford's debt. Ford have to renege on all this debt too. They can't afford the interest of around $2 billion a year. Not only that, their SG&A alone is almost $3 billion a quarter. And their business is making ICE cars that have no buyers. They won't be able to sell enough to cover their overheads, and people are waking up and realizing that the depreciation in an ICE car is getting insane, and Teslas, well, they're appreciating. So if Ford have even a $50 billion bailout, how can that save the company? It might keep the lights on for another couple of years, making cars that no one wants to buy. Where are they even going to keep all that excess stock? And it's not like they can just suddenly start selling EVs. Their plan for that was mid-decade, where they still plan on only selling 1 million EVs a year and without a profit, even with subsidies. And they would still have to compete against Tesla, that by this stage have ramped up significantly. I mean, I do doubt they could get $50 billion, as it's absurd. But the GFC managed a $700 billion bailout. So who knows? But Ford can't use the reasoning of it will collapse the entire financial system. Their sell is all the jobs it will save. And it's true. We have probably 200,000 people losing their jobs just working for legacy autos. And sure, Michigan will be hit hard. But remember, Biden has already done everything he can to get them these EV tax credits that were supposed to solve this issue. And that could be about a $100 billion budget as it is. How are they going to raise more money for companies that clearly have no plan for survival. I don't think that will pass in Congress, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy taxpayers. But okay, a lot of these people who lose their jobs will find new work, retrain with new skills. It's a good time to be looking for employment. And okay, it may require moving out of Michigan, but there is still work available. But even if we're left with 100,000 extra unemployed from these companies completely closing down, and then possibly all the other associated businesses that make parts for these companies, although a lot of that's done overseas, and then all the Ford and GM car dealerships, well, no one's buying their cars, and their used inventory is a loss on the books, due to the cars depreciating so much money as no one wants to buy them. So maybe it adds up to even 2 million unemployed. And if 1 million can't find a new job for a while, well, a $100 billion bailout for these companies to prolong their jobs for a couple more years, if that's where the money went, well, that equates to $100,000 per unemployed worker. I used $100 billion as that's what it could be argued as to what is required for the legacy autos to transition, by which I mean it's what they will argue with Congress to show how much they need to move into EVs. But no amount of money will help. It's simply good money chasing after bad money. They're stuck in their legacy systems, hence how the Chinese EVs are doing so much better than them. In other words, such a bailout would be enough to cover each unemployed worker $100,000. Obviously that's an obscene amount, it's not necessary, and these unemployed workers, well, they aren't looking for handouts, they're looking for work. Most people are happy to do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I think $25,000 would be sufficient enough to cover most of these workers to transition into a new career. If the government really wanted to do something to help these workers, then Tesla would be the one to talk to. The government could purchase some of Ford and GM's existing factories even, for Tesla to retrofit into EV factories, thus giving a lot of these people jobs. The workforce is already available there for Tesla. Sure, it's not quite the same job, and a lot of them may need to retrain, but the government also has to accept that they may have lost their ICE companies. They don't want to lose their EV industry too. At the end of the day, it's really US versus China, not Ford and GM versus Tesla. And the government should do everything they can to facilitate Tesla's growth. Freeing up a mass amount of employees will give Tesla more available labour. Giving them existing factories will save time in building new ones. I know a lot of you thinking Tesla is better off building their own factories. Well, remember that does take a lot of time. And then there's all the hiring too, finding that many workers. People are another major constraint for Tesla. These legacy auto businesses will free up a lot of available potential employees for Tesla. And it's not just working on the vehicle production line either, but all the other associated vehicle parts. Tesla could also acquire these companies to further their vertical integration. Detroit is also geographically in the other part of the US that Tesla is not serving, the Northeast, of which Elon has actually said he would consider a factory there. Along with Lake Erie for transporting cars cheaper via ship than road or rail, there's a reason Henry Ford set up in Dearborn. Then it will come down to ramping up the batteries for Tesla. I don't know how this will all play out, but it seems pretty obvious to me that one way or another, the US legacy autos will not be around much longer. Government needs to realise this as soon as possible, so instead of trying to fund a sinking ship, they could support the company in the US with the most potential. Now Biden already has what he wanted. He is in office. If it's clear these companies aren't going to be around for when he wants to campaign for his second term, then there's little motivation for him to keep them around any longer. Instead, he can actually do something to get votes instead, and rather than bailing out another corporation, perhaps give money to the people who suffered from these backward companies. He needs popularity if he can't get funding. We estimate legacy autos will be at $20,000 cost advantage compared to Tesla and the Chinese. One way to improve that problem is remove the dealership model, but that would result in an enormous amount of job losses anyway, and legacies still have too many other headwinds against them, it won't make enough difference anyway. They're stuck. No way out. The only question is, what will the government do? The EV industry will create a lot more jobs. I'm not just talking about people working for Tesla, but it will create a massive amount of deflation in transportation. This will open up a huge amount of opportunity. The issue is the opportunities are nationwide and can't be concentrated solely in Michigan, for example. I would say these workers will suffer as a result, and that would be what the government are for, to help them transition to new work. But we're in different times. People can work remotely now. It's much easier to work for yourself these days, like starting a YouTube channel or driving for Uber. This also negates the minimum wage issue. A lot of people would rather work for under minimum wage than not at all. Then they can gather experience and over time can make a living. Besides, it wasn't actually the auto industry that killed Detroit. It was the riots. Riots destroy small local businesses, the backbone of the economy. Riots are incredibly destructive to local economies. Once these businesses are gone, they're gone. small businesses terribly hard at the best of times, and it never recovered. Anyway, like always, these are just some scenarios I've run through with some potential ideas. I guess we'll see how it plays out. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.